Iran. State TV says the country's air defense system is on full alert. General, if you're still with us, I just have one other question. In terms of the ladder of Israeli attacks, you mentioned that there might be a smaller scale attack and then just kind of make a new kind of assessment. How much could Israel do without help of the United States in terms of hurting the Iranian nuclear program?
John, they can damage the Iranian nuclear program. They can give it significant damage. They cannot do the things that we could do to the Iranian nuclear program because they don't have the special ordnance that will let you go deep into the deep underground spaces where the Iranians have some of the most sensitive parts of their program concealed. So that is going to be a limit, but they can still do a significant amount of damage. And again, I don't know if they plan to come back tomorrow night. Is this a one-night event? Is it going to be a multi-day event? That's still to be discovered. The Israelis will certainly assess the damage. They'll look at how it went, and then they'll make decisions based on that. And they'll also make decisions, I'm sure, based on whatever the Iranian response is. And again, I would just emphasize the narrower the Israeli strike, the more clearly confined to the nuclear target that it is. And the nuclear target is a bunch of targets. I want to be clear, as you sort of illustrated in your very good graphic. It's a lot of targets, but as long as they're narrowly scaled against that, there's a possibility we might be able to control escalation here.
And General, what are U.S. military officials thinking right now in terms of their assets in the region that are possibly in danger? Give me a sense of the to-do list that suddenly has popped up in front of U.S. decision makers.
So everybody's at a very high state of alert right now. Probably a lot of people are in shelters. We're looking very hard at all our sensors to see what the Iranians might do next. I would think the CENTCOM commander has probably taken steps to disperse his aircraft, to position ships in different places than where they've just been, to do a variety of things, all of which will complicate Iranian targeting as they begin to decide what their next move is going to be. And I would also think that there'll probably be some clear and unambiguous messaging directed at Iran, warning them of the ultimate consequences of attacking U.S. forces and U.S. targets in the region. Because I have to believe, John, if that occurs, the Iranian regime itself will come under pressure. And I go back to a point I made earlier. Preservation of that regime remains the highest goal of Iranian statecraft.
And just holding on that point for a second, it remains the highest goal. So does that mean they're limited really in how far they're really going to go because they don't want to get a massive attack that might bring that into question?
Within their own worldview, the Iranians are realists. They know the limits of their capabilities. They've been badly exposed by the attacks of their offensive forces on Israel. Their own defensive forces have been severely attrited by prior Israeli attacks. They're at the weakest they've been in many, many years. When pressed, the Iranians are willing to negotiate. They did this during the Iran-Iraq war. It's called drinking from the poison chalice in Iranian statecraft. They've done it before. It's possible they'll do it again. I think it all depends on the nature of this attack, how successful it was, what the collateral damage is. There are a variety of factors that will go into that calculation.
All right, General McKenzie, thank you. I want to turn to Margaret Brennan. Margaret, remind us again of sort of the nature of the deal that was on the table between the United States and the Iranians, or what the terms were they were at least negotiating over.
So about 2 weeks ago, Steve Witkoff, President Trump's envoy, his friend, the real estate developer who has been the person he's put at the tip of the spear with all really highly sensitive diplomacy, transmitted a proposal via Oman, that small Gulf emirate that tries to communicate with both the West and with Iran, whose regime is really diplomatically isolated. And in that proposal, the United States floated a number of different ideas, permutations of what a potential negotiated agreement with the United States could look like. But what was clear within those option sets was that the United States does not want Iran to be able to enrich uranium, nuclear fuel, on its own territory, even if it were just at low levels of enrichment for what Iran was claiming always was a civilian nuclear program. The United States was offering, okay, we'll let you have a nuclear program that is peaceful and for power purposes, a civilian one, but you'd have to go buy that enriched fuel outside of your own borders. We don't want you to have that option. That's where Iran was really insistent that they had the right to this. The U.S. offered and actually reached out, as President Trump did in his conversation with Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, to see if other states that have close relationships with Iran, as Russia does, would help with that. Russia even possibly taking some of that enriched nuclear fuel we talked about that was enriched up to that 60% level. 90% is weapons grade, so you can see how close that was and why it was making U.S. officials and other officials around the world nervous, and said you could ship that to Russia. By the way, that's what President Obama did in that 2015 diplomatic deal. So there are some ideas in this proposal that look very similar to that same diplomatic accord that President Trump exited back in 2018. Remember, until 2018, Iran had agreed to limit its program. It was only after the U.S. pulled out that they began this enrichment cycle again, and that has what has triggered this renewed concern. Their behavior in the region in terms of funding militias always continued. Their development of missiles also of concern to the United States. But the restrictions on its nuclear program are really of the utmost concern to President Trump.
Margaret Brennan, Chief Foreign Affairs Correspondent for CBS and the anchor of Face the Nation. We have an Israeli, what Israel is saying. We have reporting out of Israel that, and this is that the Iranian regime is advancing a secret program to build a nuclear weapon. This is according to an Israeli military official. Iran has enough material to make 15 nuclear bombs within days. And this, again, is according to an Israeli military official. So that is the latest. Again, Israel has just launched airstrikes into Iran. The Israeli defense minister saying in a statement that they are, quote, preemptive strikes. Our coverage will continue on CBS News 24/7, your local news, and for some of you tonight on the CBS Evening News. This has been a CBS News special report. I'm John Dickerson in New York.